I was sitting there, near the back, in the third row from the aisle. My blazer, somewhat ill-suited for the occasion, felt tight. The air carried the scent of starch and old stories. This was Ethan Jackson's promotion ceremony, my younger brother. My father's favorite story. Everyone knew Ethan. One of the brightest seals in his class. A true Jackson, someone whispered behind me. He is, another replied. I didn't even blink. I'd heard that phrase my whole life. They didn't see me. Didn't acknowledge me. To them, I was just Kimberly, the daughter who couldn't hack it, the quitter, the one who tried the Navy for a bit before disappearing into some vague IT job. No one ever bothered to ask about it. It was the story my family told, and they told it so often I think they started to believe it. Maybe I even believed it, for a while. I adjusted the cuff of my blazer, my fingertips brushing the spot where the sleeves of my real uniform used to end. Colonel Kimberly Jackson, Naval Cyber Command. But not today. Today, I was just a shadow on the edge of my brother's spotlight. Up front, my parents sat like royalty. Admiral Samuel Jackson, retired, still ramrod straight in his civilian suit, and my mother, Charlotte, with her pearl necklaces at her throat, her hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. She looked proud. I had no plans to be seen, no intention of being anything but polite and invisible. But when General Thomas Morgan approached the podium, towering, composed, the kind of man who never stumbled over his words, his gaze swept the crowd once, then landed on me. And stayed there. He paused, long enough for something to shift in the air. I didn't move. Not yet. I was born into a family where rank came before name. In the town where I lived, this wasn't uncommon. Almost every house had a flag on the porch and a story about someone who served. But in the Jackson household, service wasn't a calling, it was a bloodline. My grandfather commanded destroyers in the Pacific. My father, Admiral Samuel Jackson, led operations in the Gulf and briefed presidents. I learned to say, yes, sir, before I learned to ride a bike. We didn't have family vacations, we had duty station transfers. The living room was a museum of commendations and folded flags, and no one ever touched the wall where their bronze star hung. There were rules, unsaid but ironclad: men served, women supported. Jackson men fought, bled, commanded. Women stood tall at ceremonies and made the perfect potato salad. This was the shape of pride. It wasn't cruel, it was tradition. It was what worked. And I messed up the symmetry. I didn't make a fuss about it, I just didn't fit where I was told to go. While other girls watched music videos or practiced pageant routines, I was in the garage taking apart an old radio, just to find out how the signal moved. At 9, I beat Ethan at a logic game our father brought back from Japan. He threw the board out that night, claiming pieces were missing. At 12, I started staying up past curfew, sneaking into my father's home office. He thought I was asleep. But I was actually reading old Navy cryptography manuals like they were bedtime stories. I liked the feeling of being inside something no one else could touch. Then one night, he caught me. I was sitting at his desk, cracking a code from an old Pacific Fleet exercise. The solution came quickly. I jotted it down on a yellow pad and leaned back, proud. He appeared in the doorway. I looked up, smiling. I think I cracked it, I said. He walked closer, looked at the paper, and read the sequence. Then he did something I'll never forget, he laughed. Not cruelly, not kindly. Just that dismissive kind of chuckle that heats your face and chills your spine. He ruffled my hair and said, "Stick to the cheering section, Kimberly. This is for the men who run the show." Then he walked out, and I sat there, staring at the pad like it had betrayed me. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. But something inside me went quiet that night. Not broken, just sealed. From then on, I knew, if I wanted to be seen, I'd have to earn it somewhere else. And maybe I could never bring it back inside. When I turned 17, I stopped sharing anything that mattered. I still went to dinners, still asked about Ethan's training or Mom's book club. I smiled in photos. I played the daughter part well. But the part of me that mattered, the part that built something in silence, stayed hidden. That year, I applied to the United States Naval Academy without telling anyone. I trained at dawn, ran 6 miles every morning, memorized specs for nuclear submarines, cracked crypto challenges at lunch. I didn't date, didn't go to prom. I wasn't rebelling, I was preparing. And no one noticed. When the acceptance letter came, it was in a plain envelope. No gold seal, no fanfare. Just words that changed everything. We are pleased to offer you admission. I stared at it for an hour, not because I doubted I deserved it, but because I wasn't sure what to do with the joy. Where do you put it when there's no one to share it with? That night, I brought the letter to dinner. My hands trembled. I tucked my hair behind my ears 3 times before I spoke. Annapolis, I said, laying the envelope on the table like evidence. I got in. There was a pause. Then my father leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. He didn't smile. He didn't even pick up the letter. You'll fold under pressure, Kimberly. Boot camp will send you home crying. He pulled out his wallet and laid a crisp $100 bill on the table. Then he turned to Ethan. I bet she washes out by week 4. Ethan chuckled, not unkindly, just with that ease of someone who finds something obvious. My mother reached across and took my hand. Her voice was soft. Sweetheart, you're so brilliant. You don't need to prove anything. You could teach, you know. Stay safe. Safe. I looked at the money, at Ethan's easy smile, at my mother's gentle retreat. The air felt thick. I said only this, I'm going. My voice didn't waver, but something inside me moved away from them. They didn't drive me to Annapolis. They said it was too far, too much traffic. I took a bus, 6 hours with a duffel bag and no goodbye hug. I watched them through the window, Dad standing with his arms crossed, Mom wiping her eyes, Ethan checking his phone. For a moment, I wondered if I was making a mistake. Then the bus turned, the house vanished from sight, and that thought never came back. Annapolis didn't make things easy. From the moment I stepped off the bus, it was noise, order, and motion. Names shouted, boots slapping the ground, someone yelling before I could even breathe. And I loved it. Not because it was easy, it wasn't, but because, for the first time in my life, I was in a place where no one expected me to fail. Still, it didn't take long for the whispers to start. She's a girl, and not even that tall. Jackson. As in Admiral Jackson. She must be here on legacy. They didn't know my father would rather eat his medals than vouch for me. During Live Fire Week, I picked up my rifle and noticed something was off. The sight was misaligned, subtly, but enough. One bad shot and someone could have been hit, or me. I reported it, and they told me, maybe you bumped it. I hadn't. Someone wanted to rattle me. And it worked. That night, in my bunk, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was already starting to crumble. 3 weeks later, during a cyber simulation exercise, I was mid-hack, tracking a threat scenario, when a power spike hit my station. I was thrown back hard. The flash burned out the interface, and my wrist, the pain radiated up my arm like a fuse had been lit inside the bone. Diagnosis, nerve damage. Recommendation, surgery, months of rehab, possible discharge. I didn't cry, not in public. But in the infirmary, when the curtain drew shut and the lights dimmed, I lay there, watching the shadows move across the wall, and for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder if maybe my father had been right. I wrote home only once, not asking for help, just trying to anchor myself to something that felt familiar. I got a reply 2 weeks later. Mom's letter was kind, if you didn't read too closely. She talked about the garden, the neighbor's new dog, and a distant cousin's engagement. It ended with, "You were always so bright, Kimberly. Perhaps this is a sign to try something more stable." No letter from my father, nothing from Ethan. And then Lieutenant Laura Stone walked in. She didn't knock, didn't ask how I felt. She threw a yellow folder onto my tray and said, 3 codes. Have them solved by Monday. I blinked at her. She pointed to the brace on my wrist. You still have a brain, don't you? That's how it started. Every week, she brought more puzzles, harder, shorter deadlines, impossible simulations. When I hesitated, she snapped, "The Navy doesn't need polished, it needs something forged under pressure." I didn't know it then, but she was giving me the one thing I'd needed since the day I left home, a reason to believe I could belong, even if no one was looking. I stayed. I finished rehab with a brace on my wrist and steel in my spine. The pain never fully left, but I learned to move with it, to bear weight differently, to type again, slower at first, then faster than before. I trained when no one watched, studied while others slept. By graduation, I was in the top 5% of my class. I stood at attention in my dress white uniform, medals still warm from their last polish, my posture perfect, my salute sharp. My family came, exactly as they said they would. My mother wore navy blue and pearls. My father, in full suit and tie, nodded formally. Ethan was tall now, 19, still with that cocksure glint in his eye. They applauded when my name was called, politely, no whooping, just a polite acknowledgement, like I'd passed a test they hadn't studied for. At the reception, my father shook my hand like I was someone else's daughter. "You made it through," he said, his tone neutral. "But the real Navy is a different beast. That's where we'll see what you're made of." I smiled, not from affection, just from instinct. Then I turned away before I said something I couldn't take back. I didn't mention my orders to Naval Cyber Command or the commendation waiting on my desk. They didn't ask, so I didn't offer. The next year, I led an operation that tracked a cyber attack targeting U.S. ports. Thousands of lives were at stake, billions in infrastructure. We stopped it, barely. My name was on the after-action report, first line. That night, I called home. Mom answered, distracted. "That's nice, dear, but when do you think you'll settle down?" My father took the phone next. He didn't ask what the operation was, didn't ask what my team had done. "Lieutenant is a stepping stone," he said. "Most don't last there. Don't get ahead of yourself." I hung up, staring at the screen, the commendation still in my lap. It was the first time I understood they didn't just misunderstand me, they had chosen not to see me at all. That Christmas, the house smelled the same, clove-baked ham, the faint scent of pine. But the silence underneath had shifted. Ethan had just finished SEAL training, his uniform was new, the insignia still stiff on his chest. He wore it like it belonged to him, even before he'd earned it. And to my parents, it did. The living room was already decorated in his honor, photos on the mantle, a flag pin on every guest's lapel. His future was the only story being told. "Ethan's the real thing now," Dad told one of the neighbors. "He's where the Jackson legacy lives." I sat on the couch, a gift in my lap, waiting for the right moment to speak. I had just returned from a classified ops simulation that intercepted an international sabotage attempt. My team had received classified recognition. I had been promoted again, faster than expected. It wasn't something I could fully share, but I thought maybe some part of it would be enough. So I started gently. We just finalized a big protocol operation, I said, my voice steady. Prevented a lot of damage. A lot of people are safe tonight. Dad looked up from the ham he was carving. Not cruel, just disinterested. Kimberly's doing her computer things, he said. Ethan's out there, leading men in real things. The room chuckled. Even Ethan gave a wry smile. Hope your Wi-Fi held up, sis. I didn't reply. Just looked at him. He looked away. Later, in the kitchen, I helped my mother with the dishes. She handed me a dish towel and touched my shoulder, like she still believed that was love. You were always the smart one, she said softly. Just not made for the other path. That's when it happened. I didn't explode, didn't yell. I just stopped. I stopped trying to be seen. I stopped offering updates. I stopped giving them the pieces they never wanted to hold. That night, after the presents were opened and the guests left, I gathered my things and left without a sound. No one asked why. And they never offered an explanation. The invitation arrived in a thick white envelope. Inside, gold letters spelled out what I already knew: Ethan Jackson, newly commissioned Navy lieutenant, would be honored at Naval Base Coronado in 3 weeks. I left it on my kitchen counter for 5 days. Some mornings, I almost threw it away. Other nights, I found myself rereading it, as if, hidden between the lines, there was a reason not to go. My husband, Liam, watched me in silence. He didn't press. When I finally spoke, my voice surprised even me. I'm going, I said. He nodded, his jaw tight. You don't owe them anything. I know, I said, but Ethan's still my brother. We both knew I wouldn't wear the uniform. This was his day, not mine. I chose a simple navy blazer, a white blouse, polished but understated flats. Hair in a low bun. No medals, no insignia. The ranks and stars I'd earned remained locked in a case at home. I drove alone, rehearsed my neutral smile, braced myself for Dad's comments, Mom's worried glances, Ethan's easy jokes. At the base, I blended into the crowd, joining the line of guests. It was a hot day, the sun glinting off every stripe in sight. They spotted me in the parking lot. Kimberly. You came. Mom chirped, hurrying toward me. Dad stood beside her, hands behind his back. Good to see you showed up, he said, the way people say when they don't expect much. Ethan smiled and gave a half shrug. Didn't think you'd want to relive old Navy memories. Just here to celebrate, I said. Inside the auditorium, flags lined the stage, a string quartet played softly. Seats filled with officers, families, commanders. I sat near the aisle, alone. The ceremony protocol began, presentation of colors, anthems sung, names called. Then General Thomas Morgan stepped onto the stage. He was tall, composed, his voice had that calm, practiced clarity. He lauded Ethan, described his performance, his leadership, his future. Then his eyes swept the room and landed on me. They didn't move. His voice faltered for just an instant, but I felt the shift. Something small in the air changed. He adjusted his notes, continued. I lowered my gaze, strove to be invisible, but I knew what was coming. The final words of praise were uttered, applause rose and fell. And then the moment came. General Morgan stepped down from the stage and walked straight into the crowd, toward me. He stopped and saluted. Colonel Jackson. It was loud enough for the rows around us to hear. Your cyber framework saved my team during the Quran breach. I never got a chance to thank you. The room froze. Conversation stopped, head swiveled. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her chest. She stumbled for a chair. Dad stood immobile, his jaw slack. Ethan didn't speak, he just stared, like someone had rewritten everything he knew. More voices joined. Wait. Colonel Jackson. The blackout operation. A younger officer stepped forward. Ma'am, your protocols are now required reading at Joint Command. I stood up slowly. Thank you, General, I said quietly. But today isn't my day. It's my brother's. He paused, then nodded respectfully. Understood. But it's good to see you here, ma'am. And just like that, the story they told about me shattered. They found me near the main hall, by a small conference room with the door still ajar. My mother was pale, one hand gripping the back of a chair. Ethan was beside her, still in uniform, arms crossed, like he hadn't decided if this was real or not. My father was pacing, slow and stiff, like someone walking through a memory he didn't trust. When I stepped in, he stopped. Colonel, he said, not loud, but sharp. What kind of game is this? I closed the door behind me. It's not a game. He took a step forward. You let us believe. No, I said. You believed what was easiest. I didn't correct you. Mom spoke next, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us? We didn't know, Kimberly. How could we not know? I looked at her, not with anger, just with quiet clarity. Because you didn't want to. That's not fair, she whispered. I agree, it's not. I shot back. Every time I tried to share something, school, missions, promotions, you either shut it down, or changed the subject, or made it about Ethan. Ethan shifted, his jaw tightening. I didn't know, he said softly. I mean, I knew something was different. You talked different, carried yourself different. But I didn't ask. I guess I didn't want to be the second Jackson. That hit deeper than anything else in the room. I didn't stay silent to hurt you, I said finally. I stayed silent to protect myself. Dad rubbed the bridge of his nose. You're telling me all these years, while we thought you were failing, you were leading operations like this? Yes. And we mocked you. Yes. He didn't answer, just stood there, the weight of it bending his shoulders. Then the door creaked open and Liam stepped in, quiet as ever. Are you okay? He asked me. Yes, I said. They just found out I'm not a failure. He looked around the room, then back at me. Took them long enough. A week later, the phone rang just after sunset. It was my father. Not a relayed message from Mom, not an email. His voice. We'd like to have you over, he said, formal, like he was issuing a dinner invitation to a visiting dignitary. Just us. No neighbors, no speeches. I paused before answering. All right. That Saturday, Liam and I pulled into the driveway I hadn't seen in over a year. The porch light was on, the steps swept. The door opened before we knocked. Mom greeted us with a hug that didn't squeeze too tight. Thank you for coming, she said, her voice low but steady. Inside, the table was already set, not for show, just simple plates, cloth napkins, water glasses already poured. Dad stood when we entered the dining room. I hadn't seen him stand for anyone in years. Kimberly, he said, would you like to sit? Dinner was cautious, everyone choosing words like stepping stones. Midway through, he put down his fork and looked directly at me. I've been thinking, he said, and I owe you an apology. Not one, several. He didn't list them, didn't explain. I nodded. That was enough. Mom reached across the table and touched my hand. We thought we were protecting you, but maybe we were just protecting ourselves. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, I stopped sharing because every time I tried, you turned it into something smaller. I needed to protect what I'd built. Ethan, quieter than usual, added, "We made it hard for you to be honest. That's on us." No one cried, but something softened enough to let the room breathe. 6 months later, I stood on a stage in Washington. The Navy Cross pinned just above my heart. It was one of the rare times my work was allowed to come into the light. This time, not behind closed doors or buried under classification levels. Just a name, a face, a medal that said, "We see her." In the front row, my family sat together. My mother dabbed her eyes with a cloth handkerchief I hadn't seen since childhood. Ethan was in his dress blues, heels together, spine straight. When I stepped down from the platform, he saluted first. My father shook my hand, then pulled me into a brief, unprompted hug. "You redefined what Jackson means," he said. I met his eyes. "I didn't do it for the name, Dad." "I know," he said at last. "That's what makes you who you are." Later, someone from the press approached. "Colonel Kimberly, what does this honor mean to you?" I looked past the lights, past the applause, past all the years they hadn't seen me. And I said, "It means I was never lost. Just never seen." Thank you for listening to Kimberly's story. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share to support us in bringing more inspiring stories, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new releases. See you in the next video.